Welcome back, my friends. In today's video, I have a really special card to share with you. I have drawn my inspiration for this card at recreating a China pattern that was my mom's China pattern when they entertained in the Air Force. Now, when my mom passed away, my daughter was graduating from nursing school with her bachelor's degree, and I gifted this to my daughter, and she displayed it just like this in her china cabinet. So that is where the inspiration for this card came from. Now, this card is going to be constructed in this video in 5 stages. In other words, we're going to go from start to finish. I'm going to share every bit of the process with you, starting here with the stenciling. So the video is about 30 minutes long, but we go through 5 different things in the video, which I think you will really like, the different things and aspects that I share with you. There's lots of tips and techniques, and the overall design of the card I think will be very helpful. This cabinet is a new product from Hero Arts. It's in their newest release, and it's beautiful the way they designed it. If you did not see my up-close video yesterday, I did release a video that showed a few of their new products, and they're all in the same theme of kitchen and dishes and anything that creates scenes from baking and themes like that. So it's really a creative collection. Now, the first thing we're going to do here is ink with our lightest color. This is a 3-piece stencil set, and we're going to go in with ink or iceberg. These are Altenew fresh dye inks that I'm using. And for this layer, I'm not going to be too particular about getting every single nook and cranny, but I am going in both directions. Now, my stencil skipped there just a little bit because the outside edge of my stencil is not much bigger than my paper. So there's not a whole lot of room for the grip mat to secure it. So I'm going to add a little bit of tape here to the top, and eventually I add it to the bottom as well, just as a safety measure. And we use this same tape all throughout the rest of the video. But it's just easier when there's not much border around your stencils, because all companies make their stencils different. And it doesn't mean the quality is different. It just means that's the manufacturer's way of creating this stencil. So for this here, see, I didn't go super even anywhere there, but I am going to switch out to level 2 or stencil 2 now. And we will line up those registration marks on the corner. I don't know if you noticed at the beginning of the video, but I filled in those 4 corner marks. There's 4 small cubes at each corner. And I just took a mechanical pencil and filled those in. So now we're stepping up to Eastern Sky and giving it a good dose of ink. I'm going counterclockwise here, and then I turn around and go back clockwise, and this makes sure that all of those nooks and crannies do get ink in them. I'm using the small blender brush from Altenew. It's got a flat surface, which is what I like when I'm stenciling most of the time. I like a flat head. It really does give you a smooth blend or a smooth layer of color. That's my preferred brush. I do tend to use the inexpensive brushes a lot of time for my hybrid and oxides in my craft room, just because these blender brushes that I'm using here are a lot more expensive, and it's hard to have 2 sets of them, and you don't want to cross-contaminate your brushes with your ink pads that are different. at least not pigment based and dye based. You can mix and match your dye base all day long, which I do. And I do not have a different brush for every color, like every ink pad. I just use one brush pretty much for every color. And that has worked for me. If I'm going from a dark to a light, I just rub off my brush in my microfiber cloth. So here we're going with Persian blue, and this is the darkest of my colors. I'm going for a Delft look, which is the color that my mother loved. Her china was actually more of a blue and turquoise color tone onto a white china. And that was only brought out as a child when they were entertaining in the military. So it was well kept. It was always behind the doors at the bottom of her cabinet. And I have her actual cabinet to this day. So she passed away almost 5 years ago. And I still have her china in her china cabinet, though I did gift her china to my daughter. So here is the teacup. This is my thought process now. I cut this piece in half. Yes, I did. It hurt, but yes, I did. And I'm getting my idea for the china here that I am going to create this china cabinet and use the, here I'm designing now, I'm thinking. And I just wanted to show this part to you because this is how I think out my cards, and I thought it would be helpful. But my idea there was to use that, and one side is going to be the teacup, the big teacup that you saw there, and the other one I die cut all the plates out of. So this is the actual bone china. And then from an inked piece of paper, so that it would coordinate perfectly, I die cut the same die out, and we're going with a 6-piece set because that's what fit better. And in the center of these plates, they are only held in by 3 little tiny pieces of paper, little tabs like. So you just have to do 3 small snips, and that center section comes out. So I decided to go with a small secondary plate, like your salad plate, and then I cut out the white cups. And then from this casserole dish, which comes from the retro casserole dishes set, I die cut from these papers, the same stencil paper, a little leaf that was small enough to glue right here on top of the small teacups. I'm putting that right there so that I can easily pick it up with my pickup tool. And then I glued that right there on that glue dot that I added. So once I glue these together, I'm going to place this smaller cup or smaller plate, or you could even look at that as a saucer possibly too. But I looked at it as a salad plate. And then you have your teacup. And then I used a white gel pen and I added white little dots along the scallops of that blue plate. And then you end up with a place setting. So I'm making 6 of those, and we will have that decorating the top of our china cabinet. And I was just so excited by the way these turned out. Now, when I gifted my mom's entire set of china, now she had the teapots, the tea, the tea, the coffee, and all of the pieces. I mean, she had everything. And I'm sure she picked those up probably in Europe because my parents were in the military and they did live in Europe before I was born for 4 years in Germany. And then we lived in Europe for a year and a half when I was a child. But she when my daughter received them as her graduation gift, she put them on display in her china cabinet, just like they are in this card. And that was my main focus, was to make it look like my daughter's china cabinet. There's the piece. See how it looks like a little china setting? So now we're going to start inking the china cabinet. But I'm just showing you the paper. That one's going to be the back, and it's going to be darker. These all are going to be from espresso. I'm just moving those out of the way. But anyways, so we're going to create this to look like the way my daughter Nicolette has designed her dining room. So now these pieces here are from Your Paper Insider. These are specialty pieces that I'm using to create this. All of the cardstock, actually, I believe, is from Your Paper Insider. It's a website that I work with that does monthly subscriptions for magical boxes of beautiful coordinated papers. But this one here came in one of my boxes. It's a wood grain textured card, and I wanted it to be a deeper wood because my focus of this card is not the card itself, it's the china. So that was my goal, is to set this china out and make sure it was the main attraction. So I'm just staining this wood, and I found with the texture of the wood that it helped to go left and right instead of up and down with the grain. And when you look at it closely, you can actually see the lightness of the wood in the grain, which was really neat, because when I do the background, even though you don't see it in the finished card, when I do it in the background, you can actually see a big knot in the wood, which I thought was fabulous. But just the idea of the options you would have with this piece, you know, in your designing when you need wood in your project. And the flooring is also a wood, but it's not a texture, deep texture wood. It's a thinner type of wood that came in a box as well. But look at that. Isn't that fabulous? And look, the doors all open. This one opens from the bottom, and then the top opens. And then these little pieces are moldings for the windows to give them definition. So now we're going to be going over this background with pure graphite. And, you know, I wasn't really worried about the extra ink on my mat there because I was going to a darker color. So, you know, I could have cleaned it twice, but I figured I'm just going to save on my cleaning product, and we'll clean it up with some extreme clean here in just a moment. But and I wasn't super picky about all the excess, you know, on the edges or anything like that. But you see that big knot there? Now, extreme clean. The first thing I'm doing here, and people ask me this all the time, how do you keep your mat clean? Everybody's mats are stained. This is the 9x13 craft mat from Altenew. Well, this is how I do it. And you can do it too with your 15% coupon code Melanie15. This is the LDRS Creative Extreme Clean. I take my time and I use a microfiber cloth and the Extreme Clean, and I use a couple doses of it, and I usually get my mats pretty darn clean. A lot better than a lot of other people in the industry. So I get a lot of questions about that, which I put that in there. But again, if you're ever shopping LDRS Creative, feel free to use my coupon code. It's never ending as long as I'm with the company, which I hope is a very long time. They're very supportive of me and the Better Press Babes, and I love helping a small business, and they are so generous to you guys. So if you're ever shopping for anything crafty, check them out. They're a small business, and they all need the support right now. So, LDRScreative.com. Here, I'm adding the molding, and I'm just using little tiny dots with my glue press. I love that you can just get the little tiny ones so you don't have all the excess glue all the time. And it doesn't hurt my hands, which I also love. So there's our molding. Perfect. Now, my husband gave me such a great idea that if you didn't want, if I hadn't put that molding on there, I could have added acetate under the molding, and it would have had glass in the cabinet. Wouldn't that have been precious to do that? Now, I had forgotten to cut that piece, so I had to go and cut it real quick. But that's our shelf in the cabinet. So we have 2 layers of our plates. I wanted it to be a service of 8, but it didn't work that way, not with the spacing. I didn't want them layered up because that wouldn't have looked as good. Now, my camera here goes a little blurry in and out as I assemble this, but normally when it does that, I try to edit it out for you. I didn't want to edit this out because it would have gotten too choppy, and I want you to see how I actually sort this. So I apologize if that affects any of you. It is going to be because I'm taking things in and out of the photograph as I move the plates and remove the plates and go back and forth. It's going to do that, and I have no control over that without making you miss a lot here. So I wanted to leave it in, and I do. Like I said, see, it happens when I take something out and put it back in. It's doing it by my hand moving in and out. I'm hoping to upgrade my camera eventually, but it is an extremely large purchase, and I don't actually profit from anything I do on YouTube. So that's why I always ask people to use affiliate codes, is, use affiliate links when possible with makers, is because with all the expenses that makers have, a lot of us don't profit anything. We make nothing. And we do this because we love it, because we love you, not because we're trying to earn a living. So anytime you're inspired by a maker and you decide to shop for something for yourself, make sure to use their affiliate codes or their links, their affiliate links that are down below in their descriptions. All of those links cost you absolutely nothing. It's kind of like giving them a tip after a meal, your waitress, and it costs you nothing, but it gives them a few extra pennies. It's a small percentage of your purchase, and it helps the bottom line and helps them break even. I'm sure the larger content creators do profit from what they're doing. Eventually we all will, but just keep that in mind when creators inspire you. It's a good way to say thank you. But in other ways, you can also hit that like button, that subscribe button, that notification bell, leave a comment, and make sure you always hit that thumbs up. All of those things help the creator receive more views, and more views also ends up being more pennies. So everything helps. Everything. Even watching the video to the end help the algorithm. Now I'm showing you these things because right now I'm thinking we need to add something else. So I'm going to be die cutting a little bit extra for that bottom section. Now we're going to be doing our background. I am using some Versamark, and we're going to do just a subtle watermark technique here on the background so that there's just a little bit of texture and the look of like a patterned wallpaper. I've just laid my piece of paper in there. I got some scratch paper, and we're just going to really burnish this in. I'm going to even get my little tool for my MISTI and rub that on, and there we go. Just some light little flowers. Just going to heat that a little bit so that it dries and I don't smear anything. Doesn't take but a second. And then we have our background. That's all I'm doing. Super easy. Now we're going to start. Oh, I'm going to make the baseboard. And all I did was cut a small, tiny piece, sliver really, and then one a little bit thicker and layered them together. And then we're just going to glue these down. Now this piece of wood grain is a lot thinner, and I don't want my glue showing through it. So I decided to use the tape runner. That tape runner is from scrapbook.com. And we're going to just line this up here at the bottom. That's our wood floor. Then we're going to take our actual baseboard and we're going to lay our baseboard here. I just wanted a subtle background because I want the china to shine. That is my goal. And at the moment it looks a little small, but we're going to be adding things to it. Now these infinity dies here, I grabbed this out to create a carpet. This I thought was perfect for that size. So I'm going to lay that down as our carpet. And I think this is going to be precious. I thought a light green would be nice because we're going to have greens in the leaves. That's how I chose my color. And I'm just going to press that in and we'll see how it looks here. Fits the legs perfectly, actually. And then I've chosen a hugs sentiment, and that is from the, let's see, what is that from? The hugs is from the Peace Words Fancy Die Set. Now we're using some terracotta ink from Altenew here, and I'm just taking a lighter orange cardstock and darkening up the pots so they look like they're terracotta pots. We're going to use these, one next to the china cabinet. In the other, we're going to create a kind of a vining type plant that was like plants my mom had in her kitchen when I was little. She had these small philodendron leaves type plants. Actually, we had a couple of them at my wedding from her kitchen. And we had a plant on either side of our actual wedding arch that sat up on these little podiums, like, and the leaves fell down to the ground. So we're going to put one of these on top of the china cabinet, and I'm going to have all the leaves vining down on the side. So I thought that would be pretty neat. And I learned that in other parts of the country, that philodendrons have larger leaves, like the one on the right, which I found very interesting. So we're going to go ahead and add some 3D foam here real quick and place our china cabinet on our card. Super simple. I love this. This card has brought me so much joy, let me tell you. It took me 2 days to figure out exactly what I wanted on this card. But then when I finished it, an overwhelming amount of joy came rushing over me. And I'll explain why here at the end. So I'm adding a couple pots. We have a couple blues. One is a kind of a shiny foil, and the other is just a straight blue cardstock that's a little bit darker. Here again, I wanted them subtle, and I cut that other pot down a little shorter so it wasn't too like obnoxious up there. I just wanted a hint. And I'm going to use the full size piece of the plant die here. And then we're going to just do some haircuts on these other ones so I can just kind of make them meander whichever direction I want. Because don't forget, guys, you can cut up your die cuts and get creative. And that's what I'm doing here. I like to create my cards and make them look like I want them to look. I don't like to copy. I like to create. Now, that being said, there is nothing wrong with recreating someone else's design. Now, I wouldn't enter that into a contest or something like that. And when I post something, if you do, I would recommend, just out of respect for the maker, give them a tag or say thank you. Something like that. Some designers might get offended if you just flat out copy a project. I personally, love the shout outs if somebody copies my work. I'm not going to get offended if you copy and you don't tell me. But I take it as a huge compliment if someone loves your work enough to actually take the time to try to reproduce it. I think it's a compliment. So anytime you see an idea that I have come up with, you're more than welcome to, create it or change it up to your liking. That's the whole point of doing this on YouTube, right? Is for inspiration. So if you like something I do, feel free to make it again. That's why I give you all the details. That's the beauty of YouTube. So I'm just think this is the last one here. Gonna glue this one on, and I have trailed it up and down off of the actual cabinet itself to give it actual 3D feel. Now, I have made a coffee creamer and sugar pot here. So we've got those two here, and the sugar has a little tiny top, which is inked solid blue. I know it's impossible to see, but it's there, and I'm placing it right now. So we're going to put that in there. That's why those tools are so important, the little pick. And then for my other plant, I'm going to use some dimension. Now, when I put my dimension on the back of my cabinet, I used 1mm foam. For the plant here, I'm using 2mm foam, and that allows me to pop up this above. Now, this one I had to take off because it's going to actually go over the edge of the cabinet. So that's what I love about having both 1mm and 2mm. You can get both at Spellbinders, and you can get both at Scrapbook Pal. So those give you two options that I know of. I'm sure there's others too. Now I put a couple of those vining pieces also in that little pot. And then we're going to glue down the hugs here too. And we have most of the cabinet complete. I do decide to add something else though. I just had a bunch of rain all of a sudden happen outside. It's just like went whoosh. So if you hear a little of that, I apologize. Just came on all of a sudden. Hopefully I won't lose power while I'm recording. Look at that hugs. Isn't that perfect right in there? I just thought that was adorable. Those die cuts, you gotta hold them a few seconds because, and I actually stacked that 3 on top. Now the finishing touches. I decided to go in and die cut some more from my scrap, and I made extra plates. These plates are laying down, but I cut them from the same stenciled paper. And I'm just going to layer them in here with my tool, one stacked on top of another. So this actually ended up being a service for 10 because I got 10 plates there. Now, these of course could be serving dishes, they could be whatever, but I also made 2 more teacups, and we'll sit them there. I wanted, for perspective, I wanted this stack larger than my sugar and creamer. So we're going to just add these teacups right here. And the card will be complete, I believe. But I do want to share something else with you here at the end. After completing this card, I went into my kitchen, and lo and behold, sitting on the counter was my mama's teacup. And I had forgotten it sitting there. I did not have it in front of me when I was designing this card. But I want to share it with you, if you don't mind, because it totally touched me after I created the card and I ran across. I had actually made the whole cabinet, and I walked in there and had my mama's teacup. Now, this did not match her china. This was her cup here at my house. And so when I saw that, I decided this is going to forever be framed in my craft room. So I just wanted to share that little extra tidbit with you. This is a really special project. Thank you for watching, my friends. Until next time, have an amazing day. Bye-bye.